Alright, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to show you a few tools that you can use to harden Windows. It's a hell of a lot easier than having to go in and change stuff using group policy or the registry or anything like that. These are way easier to just do it this way, and it's going to lock the hell down out of your computer. A word of warning, when you do use this stuff, it's going to end up breaking some stuff, and I'm going to show you guys one tool in specific that works best for compatibility. It's easy to change stuff back if you're running into an issue. Every now and then you'll try and run like some sort of legitimate app or whatever that there's nothing wrong with it, but when you run one of these hardening scripts or one of these hardening tools, it will basically stop it from running. A lot of people might wonder, well, why the hell doesn't Microsoft just turn this stuff all on by default? Well, basically it's because of compatibility. If they super lock things down and people's applications aren't working and all that kind of shit, people are going to get upset and annoyed. That's why Windows is basically by default, it's pretty easy to infect, whereas once you harden it, it's way better. So I'm going to show you 3 tools today that we're going to use to harden Windows, and you can use any of them. There is basically one prerequisite for all 3 of them. You have to be using Windows Defender. Now, if you're using like a full-on security suite, like let's say from ESET or Bitdefender or something like that, these tools aren't going to work, but also they'd probably be more unnecessary because those tools are going to have their own settings and all that kind of stuff that, I mean, this isn't really going to do much for them other than maybe HardeningKitty, which we'll get into in just a second. So the 3 tools that we're going to be talking about today. One of them I've talked about a little bit before, but we're going to do a more in-depth dive on it in this video, is ConfigureDefender. This has been a pretty popular one in the Windows community for the last few years now. It's been out for a while. It's actually a really good piece of software. This is my favorite because, like I said, so this is the one I'm talking about where if you run into something and let's say an app doesn't work correctly that you know is legit, but like Defender blocks it or Smart Screen blocks it or whatever the case is, you can go in and turn this stuff down, get it to run, then go and turn stuff back up. So we'll go over this one. Now, what goes along with it, it's from the same author, Andy, is he wrote a separate tool called HardConfigurator. And this was just recently updated to work with Windows 11's 22H2 update. There was a bunch of issues with him trying to get it to work with the default software restriction policies. So this didn't work for a little bit, basically just up until last month he got this working. So that's the first tool we're going to take a look at. Or actually, I'm going to save this one for last. We'll come back to this one here in a little bit. The next one we're going to take a look at is something called HardeningKitty. This one's pretty popular. It's been, again, this thing's been in the community for a long time. It looks like about 6 years ago is when they first released this to the public. This one's really good. I like this one a lot. I've talked a little bit about this already, but like, so you've got your STIGs that are implemented, Security Technical Implementation Guide. So I've talked about that a little bit. Basically, like on all of DoD systems, is they have to implement all of these STIGs. Now, if you go look at the STIG website, I think it's called like stigviewer.com. There's like 200 or 300 just for Windows, and to go through and have to manually do every one of those is a pain in the ass. Now, again, it's one of those things, like if you go and turn this stuff on, you're going to run into some issues every now and then where you'll need something to work and it really won't work. The issue is when you use a tool like this that just goes in carte blanche, turns all this stuff on, it's not like ConfigureDefender where you can go and disable it to get stuff to work. Once you apply these tools and all that, you know, it does its hundreds upon hundreds of changes of doing stuff. Once you run that, it's going to be a serious pain in the ass to try to go back to turn it off. But with that being said, you know, a lot of people run this stuff. They don't really have any issues with it. As you can imagine, I tinker a lot with computers. So for me, this wouldn't really be the best choice. Now, if you're just run-of-the-mill home user and you run Firefox and Steam and you're running games on there and maybe watching some movies every now and then, I don't think you'd really run into issues with this. But again, with computers, there's so many variables that go into this stuff. People can't possibly predict every single outcome of what's going to happen with this kind of stuff. It's a very case-by-case basis. So these other two tools here, I would recommend them if you're a little more advanced and you're more comfortable on applying this stuff. If you're just looking to get a lot of bang for your buck and have something simple, again, ConfigureDefender is going to be the way to go. But these are really good because you've got so like I said, you've got Stigs, you have the BSI, I don't know how to pronounce this. I think it's Sisyphus or Sisyphus. It is so the German government has their own guidelines on locking down Windows. It's separate from Stigs. So there are some changes between like what the German government has and what the US government has. So this applies to those as well. It's got some of the best security practices for Microsoft. This guy's got his own stuff built in there. Now, there's something to keep in mind here. So this can be used on Windows Home. So if you're a home user, I would definitely recommend sticking with this. If you are a home user, you can use this, but this is something that's mentioned on this tool here. This is a hardening checklist that can be used in private and business environments for hardening Windows 10. This does work in Windows 11, by the way. But in Windows 10 Home, the group policy editor is not integrated. It's the same in Windows 11. Adjustment must be done in the registry for this. There's the Hail Mary mode from HardeningKitty. Now, we'll get into the Hail Mary mode here in just a second. That's kind of like the massive big changes, if you're going to use this tool here. So if you're a home user, basically your option is you can either use this ConfigureDefender or you can use HardeningKitty, but you're going to have to use the Hail Mary method. And also, if you want to, you can just Google HardeningKitty over here at the guy's website, scip.ch. He goes into more depth on this one here with HardeningKitty, but we'll go over that in just a second. The last tool that we'll take a look at is from, I think their name is HotCakeX or HotCakeX. Physically thick and mentally sick. Now, I like this one the most. We'll go over that here in just a second. Really, a lot of that is because the documentation. If you look at all of these, the documentation on this tool by far is the best. I mean, you can look here at the scroll bar. I mean, you could scroll, keep scrolling, keep scrolling. I really like all of the documentation that was done for this. When you're making tools like this, I mean, I think HardeningKitty is great, and I'm not talking shit on them. This is really more meant for advanced users. But to have this level of detailed documentation is much better. And if you're going to use one of these tools, this is what I would recommend for people, is to run this one. Now, there are requirements for this one that we'll go over here real quick. So it needs to meet the Windows 11 hardware and VBS requirements. So that means you need to have TPM 2.0. So if you, either the physical TPM chip or you need to have the firmware TPM chip through AMD or Intel, and you have to make sure that gets turned on in your BIOS. A lot of times, especially if you built your own computer, that's probably not turned on by default. You have to have at least Windows Pro Edition. It won't work on Home Edition just because a lot of these changes that are done with this tool are done through the group policy editor. Again, no third-party antivirus. You need to just be running Defender to use this. Latest version of Windows. I'm not going to go through all of this documentation because, again, like I said, there is a ridiculous amount of documentation, which, again, that's good. That's what you, for tools like this, that's really what you want. I'm pretty impressed that the author of this tool has put in this much effort to document all of this stuff. So let's get started using these tools. So the first one that we're going to use here is HardeningKitty. So to use this, what you need to do is open up PowerShell in admin mode. So we'll go ahead and open that. Now, what you will want to do is open up your, so go to the GitHub page. So I actually want to be using this one. And here's so how to automatically download and install the latest release. If you click here and just copy this, you can just paste this into PowerShell. So we'll go ahead and do that now. And PowerShell is shitting a brick, so let me try that again. Okay, so now the tool's installed. And okay, so I gotta fix this issue here with getting the script to run. So I'm putting in this code here to get this thing to be able to run HardeningKitty. So you'll see here it's gonna ask you, do you want to change the execution policy about scripts that are not trusted? This is one thing that's kind of annoying here, but you got to deal with it if you want to be able to use this. So we're going to go ahead and hit yes. Okay, now when you're using HardeningKitty, there's a couple different ways that you can do this. So they've got the Hail Mary that I've talked about a little bit, which we'll cover here in just a second. What you can do here is if you go to your System32 folder, inside of there you'll find the HardeningKitty folder. And inside of there, you'll find lists. Now, these lists are what applies all of these security rollouts to your computer. So you've got your Sisyphus, or however the hell you pronounce that. You've got your CIS lists. You've got your STIGs. You've got all this other security baseline stuff. Like I said, this guy added in his own stuff in here on top of it. So what you can do, and you'll find this on his page here, is you can just apply one of these lists if you want to. So you could do just like your STIGs for Windows if you want to, or what you can do is apply the Hail Mary. Now, if you do the Hail Mary, keep in mind this is basically once you apply this, there's no going back. Unless one thing that I would recommend if you're going to do this, make sure you create a system restore point on your computer manually. It says here the Hail Mary method is very powerful. It can be used to deploy a finding list on a system. All findings are set on the system as recommended on the list. Please do this only if you know what you're doing. Be sure to have a backup. And the other thing that it mentions here is it is not possible to restore the system basically back to what it was before with HardeningKitty alone after Hail Mary. If this is a requirement, create an image or system backup and restore it. So we'll go ahead and paste this in here. We're going to run this finding list here, which if you go back to your System32 folder here where we've got the HardeningKitty installed on here. So we're just gonna do this one right here, but like I said, you can come in and do all this other stuff. You know, you can pick your STIGs. The STIGs are pretty good if you just went with the STIGs. I mean, that would be pretty good security. And then just one other thing that I forgot to mention here. So you need to go up here and copy this code, the import module, and paste that in here. I haven't ran this tool much. It's not really, like I said, it's just not my favorite tool to run, but it does do work well if you're willing to take the time to run this stuff. So once you hit enter, it's going to start going ahead and applying all of this stuff. You'll see that it's going to create a system restore point. This usually takes a little bit of time. You'll find a whole bunch of stuff here gets ran, so you can see it going and working through all this stuff, doing registry changes. It's going to set up Microsoft Defender Application Guard. If you guys don't know what that is, basically that's a tool that you can install that it allows Edge to run in a sandbox, the Edge browser. I'm not a big fan of it. If you go back and look at the previous video that I made talking about how to stop Windows spying, and then talking about why you shouldn't use Windows Home Edition, it's basically a big pile of spyware. I like Windows, you know, it works well for me, but it's just a absolute privacy nightmare to use. But it is pretty secure, so especially if you're using the Defender Application Guard, like I said, it's ran in a sandbox and it just works. So as you can see here, it's gone ahead and finished setting up all of this stuff. You know, you can see it's gone in and done quite a bit. Now what we're going to do is copy and paste this code here. We'll paste it into PowerShell. This is basically just going to run a sort of like an audit to let you know how secure the system is now, and it's going to give you a rating. So the rating right now is 5.8. So it says we passed 370. There's 19 medium issues and 1 high priority issue with this. And if you scroll up here, you'll see in yellow here, you'll see what it is that it's got a problem with. So disable pending on PowerShell version 2, which is an old version, medium issue. So you can go through here and find out what the different issues are with this. Now when you open, so let's just take a look here. When you scroll down to the bottom here, so when you're running these little audits and you're finding out what's going on with your system, it'll let you know, hey, here's the scoring system. So, you know, like 6 is basically excellent score. Like if you had a 6, you'd be super locked down, but there's only a few things here that are an issue. So like I said, if you want to run this tool, it's a little more complicated than the other stuff. It's the most complicated one. Now we'll move into my other ones, the other tools that I like, that I prefer. All right, so now we will check out the tool that was made by HotCakeX. This one is a lot more user-friendly than the HardeningKitty. HardeningKitty is good, and it applies a lot of security changes that really locks your system down. The problem is it's really designed more for advanced users. Like if you're a system admin, that's great. You can work through if there's any sort of issues. Should be able to work through them pretty well. But for a home user, I really would not recommend HardeningKitty. I think you're going to have too much troubles trying to get stuff to work properly with it. You could end up breaking something. It's not for someone that's not well versed with computers. Now this one, on the other hand, is a much better choice. Now, like I said, if you're a home user, this one works great. So we're actually going to go ahead and run this one. So down here, just as you open up the page, just go scroll down a little bit, click on the hardening script. You can just copy this here and go to a PowerShell that you're running as admin, and we'll go ahead and run the tool. So it's going to take just a couple minutes to download and run everything that we'd need to get this to work. All right, we're all ready to go. Now there's going to be quite a bit of options. Again, as you're about to see, this is why, especially for home users, I really think this is a way better option than using HardeningKitty, and especially because you have a lot more granular control over it's walks you through the process a lot better than HardeningKitty does. You know, like having to pick a list and then, you know, do you apply to certain things or do you apply like entire lists? Whereas we'll just go ahead and work our way through this. So this first question that it's asking here, do you want to apply the May 9th, 2023 Windows Boot Manager security measure? This is the one that I talked about a few videos ago in the Secure Boot update, where it's fixing the issue with the Black Lotus malware infection, but it had the issue that your old boot media would no longer work once you applied it. So for the purpose of this test, I'm going to go ahead and say yes. Let's go ahead and apply that. This next one here is a fix for a vulnerability in the Windows kernel. And this one caused a lot of issues, well, a lot of questions in the community, because Microsoft, they put out an announcement saying that this could break people's computers, but they wouldn't elaborate on what could get broken. And like there were entire news articles being published about people wondering, trying to figure out why Microsoft wouldn't say anything, why stuff was being broken, all that kind of stuff. So you could apply this one if you want to. If you don't want to, click no. I'll go ahead and do yes. I've already used this tool before and I've had no issues with it working, so I'm just going to go ahead and select one to apply it. Now, as we work through this stuff here on this page, as you scroll down, it goes through and it will start talking about stuff. So Microsoft security baselines. This is what it's asking here. Do you want to apply these baselines? I'm not going to cover all this stuff because this video's probably going to be pretty long as it is, and I don't want this to turn into like some hour and a half long diatribe of covering all this technical stuff, but you can go read this if you want to. For the purpose of this video, I'm gonna go ahead and say yes, and it'll take just a second to go ahead and apply all that stuff. Now it's going to ask, do you want to apply overrides for this stuff? Now, if you click here, you want to go ahead and make sure you read this and understand if you want to override this stuff. So if you override it, this stuff will work. If you don't override it, this stuff will not work. So it's these features right here. So Windows game recording and broadcasting. Prohibit use of internet connection sharing on your DNS domain network, firewall local rule merging, deny write access to removable drives not protected by BitLocker. If this is stuff that you want to have work, then you would hit yes. Otherwise, no is the more secure option, but you're going to maybe run into a little more compatibility issues. I'm going to go ahead and hit no. I do not want to override that stuff. Next thing, apply Microsoft 365 app security baseline. I'm going to go ahead and say yes. Again, you can read the documentation as to what specifically is going on there. Run Microsoft Defender category. Again, I'm going to say yes because it's running, it really hardens Windows Defender. Again, it's all of these different changes here that are being made, all super important stuff. And now we've run into a bit of an error here. Let's see if we can just run it again because I want to keep this video moving. This is part of the issue that you run into with this stuff sometimes is this stuff doesn't quite work. Again, this is why I recommend maybe just sticking with Windows or the ConfigureDefender. Okay, next thing, so do you want to run attack surface reduction rules category? I'm gonna go ahead and say yes. That's actually something that's really good to have. You can read more about the attack surface reduction that goes on here. Next thing, BitLocker category. If you run this, it's gonna go ahead and crank up the BitLocker videos. I'll make a separate video on BitLocker if you want to set this stuff manually. The way that she set the script up is that it turns the settings basically up to more or less the maximum level, like with 256-bit encryption instead of 128, which is default. It uses things like enhanced PIN with a minimum of a 10-character password. So once it sets all this stuff up here, and it takes just a moment, we will go ahead and run TLS security category, lock screen category. Make sure you understand what's going on with this one, read the documentation. User account control category, device guard. Basically, I'm going through and enabling yes and all this, especially Windows firewall. Firewall stuff is really important. Optional. And when you're running the optional Windows features, it does take just a moment to boot up, or rather finish doing what it needs to do. This is doing things like removing the legacy media player. It's, you know, there's a new media player. You don't need to be running the legacy one. Installs Defender Application Guard and Windows Sandbox, installs Hyper-V. You know, like Defender Application Guard, again, like I said, that's for Microsoft Edge. She documents all this stuff very thoroughly, so I'm not going to cover all this stuff in massive depth. Run Windows networking category and miscellaneous configurations. Windows Update Policies is a good one to have. Edge browser configurations. Top security measures. Now with this one, what you want to do is come back here to the page and see if you want to apply this stuff. So when you search the GitHub page here for top security, there's 5 items tagged. So your first one is don't display last sign-in. This is probably something that's good for, you know, like it says here, high-risk environments. This next one, only elevate executables that are signed and validated. It mentions here one of the potential impacts of it is that it can prevent poorly designed programs from prompting for UAC. So you could have issues running stuff if there's stuff that's not designed properly. Next one is automatically deny all UAC prompts on standard accounts. If you're not familiar with what that is, if you're running an admin account all the time, which I really don't recommend, then it's really not a big deal. But if you're running standard accounts, which you probably should be, is basically if someone tries to install something, it would pop up with a UAC prompt, hey, do you want to allow this to install or do whatever it needs to do? Read this whole thing here. hides the entry point for fast user switching, and this last one is blocking untrusted fonts. It does apply extra security, but this is one where, again, make sure you understand it. Apply it in a, what I would recommend is apply this in a test bed. Create like a virtual machine or something like that if you're going to run these tools, and see if the options that you want to use will work with your application. This one could end up causing some compatibility issues, so I'm going to go ahead and say no to that one. I'm going to say yes to certificate checking. Now, when you do country IP blocking, this one's pretty handy. I like having the ability to run this stuff. We'll go ahead and hit yes. There's going to be a couple different options that you have here. The first one is state sponsors of terrorism. Now, when you click on this link here, goes to the State Department, and it mentions, so it's right now it's only these 4 countries. It's North Korea, Iran, Syria, and Cuba. So if you wanted to just block those IPs, you would go ahead and hit yes. If you're going to do IP block lists, I would recommend doing it through the router level, but it doesn't hurt to do it through Windows as well. The other thing is, do you want to add OFAC sanctioned countries? Now, when you open up this one, so we'll go back here, we'll take a look at this one. What I'm not 100% sure about, I wasn't going to run a bunch of tests to try and figure this out. So it's got these ones, so these are the same ones before. Russia, so it would add Russia, and then the following regions of Ukraine. I don't know if it also adds these one, because it says other countries subject to OFAC sanctions, and it's got this list here. That's one thing that's not documented in here. I don't know if it adds those as well. So just for the purposes of this test, we'll go ahead and hit yes on that one. Then it's going to ask, do you want to run non-admin category? I'm going to go ahead and hit yes, just because we're basically applying everything in mass here. Okay, so one other thing that I'm going to cover with this tool here real quick is I had to come back and run this because I was running on a fresh VM to get this to work, and it was having an issue with the image that the Windows install image that I had mounted. So it's asking here, BitLocker is not enabled for the system drive. It's activating it now. Enter a pin for BitLocker startup, and it's asking for at least 10 characters. Now, an important thing to note on this here, when you use this, it starts encrypting right away. And you can see here, it says the recovery password will be stored in a text file in your main C drive, drive C recovery password .text. And so make sure that you get that saved in a, however you want to save the key. And here we go with this fucking remote machine being a piece of garbage again. So we'll go ahead and open that back up here. So as you can see here, once you do that, it automatically starts running the encryption. So it will turn BitLocker on, and like I said, it cranks everything up to a really high setting. But this is super important, because make sure you grab this key and do whatever you need to do with it. Because if for some reason you turn this on and Windows gets thrown into recovery mode for some reason, and you don't have that key, you do lose all of your data. You cannot get it back if it goes in recovery mode and you don't have that recovery key ready to go. Other than that, that really covers it for this tool. Like I said, there's so much documentation with this tool, which I really like, that I don't really see the need to really cover it more. The one thing that I don't, just keep this in mind, so the non-admin commands that I enabled, there was one thing that I didn't really like about that. It says enables clipboard history and it syncs with Microsoft account. Now, if you're using a Microsoft account, you probably don't really care that much about the privacy issues with using Windows. I don't like the idea of that syncing with Microsoft account, but I mean, if you're going to be using a Microsoft account on a Windows computer, it's going to collect a lot of stuff anyway. But to me, that's I don't really like that, just for the privacy issue. But it's Windows. It is what it is. Okay, so now on to the last tool. This is the one that I really recommend most people just stick with because, like I said, if you run into an issue, if a program or something doesn't work quite right that you know should work or that was working before you use these tools, this is the one where you can come back in and turn stuff off and have stuff work properly. So this first one is ConfigureDefender. Again, there's another tool here which is called HardConfigurator. That is one that it goes hand in hand with this. A couple things with this, it's a very easy tool to use. So you've got your default settings. High is a pretty good one. You won't get a whole lot of false positives or run into a whole lot of issues with this one. You could use interactive. You also you've got your info here. Max is really the best one. So I'll just turn this on and show a couple of things to you. So it's gonna ask you that it can cause some issues. I'm just gonna go ahead and hit continue. One thing, so I also like to keep the security center on hidden so I can go in and change stuff when I need to. Now with Max, it's got automatic samples. It's got automatic sample submission. That's good. Cloud protection level is block. So with this, if you run, let's say, some sort of unverified application, like Microsoft can't connect to the cloud to check it, it will just block it automatically. So let's say you lose your internet connection and Microsoft can't verify that the file, it can't verify through Smart Screen. It will just block it from being able to load. And you have to come back in the tool, turn the settings down, then run it again to get it to work. And if you run into other issues like the age of the file is too new, I've had a few times where it's blocked it just because of that. Again, that's a case where you'd have to come back in and turn down the protection settings to get it to work properly. Now by default, all of this stuff is off. So it's talking about stuff like Office macros and all that stuff. A lot of security issues through there. The other thing, if you run it on Max, controlled folder access in theory is supposed to work well. I've ran into so many issues with this. The tool has gotten better, but it still has a ways to go before it's where it should be. I personally like having it disabled. It's less of a pain in the ass with all the pop-ups. Hey, this legitimate program is trying to make changes, you know, like one of the things, like if you play games, a lot of games will have issues, like you'll go to save a game and this thing will have a complete shit fit and say, oh, well, we blocked access, and then you got to open up Defender and then allow access for it to do whatever it needs to do. This one's just a pain to deal with. So that's one thing I would recommend disabling. You could leave it on if you want to. In theory, it's supposed to protect you against ransomware. I believe Leo at the PC Security Channel has done some tests with controlled folder access though, and the video's dated back a while. I don't think this stuff works very accurately all the time. So that's basically ConfigureDefender. That's how easy it is. All you got to do is open it up, select the protection level that you want. You know, if you want to do max, or like I said, if you run into a problem, just turn it down to default, boom, you're good to go. The other thing here, this tool goes hand in hand with it, is HardConfigurator. Now there's two different tools here. You can either use this one. Simple Windows hardening is really the much easier one to use. It's basically just a plug and play, very simple to use. There's a manual that goes with it. I'll just open the tool up. When you open the tool up for the first time, it's going to automatically apply software restriction policies. So it's a simple Windows hardening has applied the SRP restrictions to allow high running privilege processes. Exit SWH to fully apply the protection. When you first run the program, you'll get this. After it's ran once, you won't get that anymore. So we'll cover that here real quick. It will also tell you it's made some required changes, but they're not yet activated. You have to exit out to apply those. So we'll go ahead and exit. I'm not gonna restart the damn computer. Let's just open this back up here. So this is also a very good tool. but there's just some stuff to be aware of. So the software restriction policies, the Windows hardening, all that stuff is good. Like I said, it goes hand in hand with ConfigureDefender. Every once in a while, you'll run into issues with this tool, which is where it's pretty rare. If you're a home user, I don't think you're gonna run into this a whole lot, but every now and then you might run across it. So something you'll see is admin PowerShell scripts get restricted. Let's click on protected SRP extensions. This is just something to be aware of. Now, if you try to run any of these extension of files, you'll get an error saying that your administrator has blocked the file from being able to run and that you need to contact your administrator to fix the issue. When you see that, what that means is that it was blocked through here, and let's say you need to run a bat file. Now, like I said, if you're a home user, you probably don't need to run this stuff. So this is just a list of extensions that it is blocking by default through this program. So it blocks things like VBS, like I said, the .bat. Probably, like I said, if you're a home user, you're probably not going to use this. If you're a power user, you may run into this issue every now and then. If you run into that, all you got to do, open up the program. You could either disable it from the main part, or you could just come in here to these extensions, remove the extension temporarily, do what you need to do, and then come back here and re-enable it. There's also other options in here, like you can do paranoid extensions, and then it adds even more extensions that are going to get blocked, including PowerShell scripts. So, if you do that, it won't even be able to run PowerShell scripts, and there's a lot of... PowerShell can be used as a pretty nasty malware vector, so it's just something to keep in mind. So that covers the 3 tools. Like I said, this one's the best. If you want to go a step up, I would recommend HotCakeX. If you're really comfortable with computers, you know what you're doing, and you're not afraid of something potentially breaking, you could go with HardeningKitty, but just be aware you can run into a lot of issues with that. If you break your computer, you can't say I didn't warn you. That's on you. With all that being said, that's going to wrap the video up, and I'll see you on Friday.